most of the people who have been paying attention to the better, more predictive, dissident narrative about public health and COVID are having the sense of, okay, well, Omicron swept in and it took the pandemic out of the public health tyrants' hands, right? It effectively handed us something that couldn't be controlled and wasn't killing very many people. And that has brought us to a place that feels like it could be the end of the pandemic. Now, I will say some people who are well positioned to think about these things have warned about what might emerge next. I don't yet know what to think about that. But let's just say, assuming that we do not have a next variant that kicks this into some other phase that we haven't yet thought about, sure, right? This does look like, well, probably the end of something, because so many people are getting this, vaccinated and not vaccinated, that at some level, to the extent that natural immunity is a decisive factor, right, we're going to reach herd immunity quickly because it's racing through the population. So with that said, the point is, all right, mandates are coming down because people can see that mandates don't really make any sense, right? What are you mandating? You're mandating a vaccine that doesn't prevent people from contracting the disease, doesn't prevent them from transmitting it, doesn't reduce viral load. On what basis are you doing that? And they will say, well, because it reduces hospitalizations. Well, even if that's true for young, healthy people, that is no reason to mandate, right? Are you protecting me from me by locking me in my house and firing me from my job? That doesn't seem like it's very likely to actually be coherent, right?
I'm kind of not feeling protected here.
Right. Maybe. Right. So the point is the absurdity of the mandates and really what has happened is that Omicron has revealed what we have been saying all along, which is that something else is driving this, right? They swear it's being driven by a desire to protect civilization. And the point is, at the point that makes no sense, they still want to do it. But
they still want to do it. And I know you're going somewhere, but I think this is a good place to just show this. I saw this on Twitter today, Zach, if you would show it. Nobody said you wouldn't get COVID if you're vaccinated. We keep on being told. Like, just, constant gaslighting by these people. And so this woman has put together just a few places where, of course, they said that you wouldn't get COVID if you're vaccinated. Here we have from Joe Biden on July 21st of last year on CNN. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. From Walensky, the director of the CDC, on March 29th on MSNBC of last year. Vaccinated people do not carry the virus. Don't get sick. Fauci, the NIAID director, on May 17th of last year on MSNBC. When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe. They will not be infected. And Fauci again of the vaccines on May 17th again last year. They're really, really good against variants. All of these things are untrue. Some of these things were lies, right? I'm not going to claim that Biden was lying. I'll bet he just didn't know. But my God. They keep on changing what it is they're claiming that they already said to us. And if we can't even keep track of that, then of course they're going to continue to win. And of course they're going to erect the new people who they can claim, okay, yeah, well, we got this wrong, and we'll have a couple of fall guys. Like, we'll make sure a couple of people have their heads sort of metaphorically cut off, and prop up some new people in the positions that already existed, with the systems that already existed, with all the same incentives that already existed.
You got to slow down through that, because people are not going to understand what's about to happen.
Go for it.
Here's the problem. You've got public health elites and whatever it is that they represent. They have screwed up at an unprecedented level. They've effectively crashed many of the functional systems of planet Earth. They've caused untold misery and, frankly, untold disease. I would suggest people take a look at John Campbell's video from this week talking about how many people actually died of COVID. It's quite eye-opening. But he also talks about what people did die of, things like, delays in cancer diagnoses and things like this. So the point is, this is an unprecedented catastrophe. And the natural outgrowth of an unprecedented catastrophe is a kind of collective soul-searching in which we figure out who screwed up, how it happened, what system should have been in place so it doesn't happen again, and we move forward in that way. But were that to happen, these incredibly powerful, many cases now incredibly wealthy elites who earned so much through this colossal error, those people have everything to lose if we actually figure out what happened and install the systems that would prevent it from ever happening again. So they're now in search of anything that can save them from facing the people who were right. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, what that means is that there's a race that is going to be kicking off here, and we're already seeing the first signs of it. And the race is for people who weren't right all along, who are now going to challenge the public health authority, right? They're going to point out just how disastrous
That's so brave.
It's very brave. They're going to say, these public health officials failed us, but, and then they're going to attack those of us who had this stuff right. And the idea is that the elites have an incentive now to embrace this new middle ground that is neither fish nor fowl, right? It is not on board with the public health narrative. It challenges it in very strong terms, but it also challenges the dissidents who will be accused of all sorts of defects. And the point is, the elites have an interest in finding that voice. The struggle to phrase it just so is now on, and so people will be falling all over themselves. Some of them will know what they're doing. They're jockeying for position in the new world order. Some of them will not know what they're doing. They will just detect that suddenly they're seeing articles on a particular theme in all sorts of places, and they will think, I could write that article, and they will write it. And so you'll have this whole new group of people in the middle, and their purpose is to prevent meaningful change, right?
No. That is the utility. That's not why they exist. They are taking advantage of an empty niche, and they will be adopted by the mainstream and the elite in order to serve the purpose of the elite.
Right. Well, let's just say the purpose of the niche is to protect the elite from a reckoning in light of what they have done to planet Earth.
This is reckoning insurance.
It's reckoning insurance. But here's the other thing. There's another dimension to this, which is that there are a huge number of people in the audience who aren't going to write that article. They're not going to write any article, but they're in a bad position, right? Because to the extent that for a year you've been browbeating people for being on the wrong side of history, and then it turns out they were on the right side of history.
Closer to 2.
Well, let's just say there are people who go back 2 years, but we've been hearing these voices. And the point is, if you're somebody who's been on the wrong side of this and you were sure you were on the right side of this, and you've been chastising people publicly, you've been shunning your friends and all, then the point is now you're in a very awkward position that actually mirrors the position of the elites who want to stay in power, right? And so the point is, you've got a bunch of people who will hunt for the best phrasing of this narrative so that they can be pulled up into the positions of power that will decide what will be done, and what will be done is symbolic shit and nothing more, right? You've got an audience in search of an excuse, which is to say, yes, the public health authorities did fail us, but those other people weren't right, right? And, you've got the elites, and their point is, look, anything so long as it doesn't take us out of our positions of power, right? That confluence of those three is going to result in a scramble that you're not going to see coming, and it's going to result in the promise of reform, and there will be no reform. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I would suggest you go watch the excellent film, The Big Short.
Not one of the films I'm going to recommend later, but yes, The Big Short is a third film.
It's a beautiful and heartbreaking film, and pay very close attention to the end. Right? This is coming, and we could get in the road. We could prevent this, but we have to be very careful, because the temptation to embrace these people who have been outside of the fray and are now going to rush in, and they're going to shout at the right people, and they're going to shout at the wrong people, and they're going to seem like they're somehow more moderate, and it's nonsense. It's strategic, right? The people that you should be talking to are people who took a risk and said what needed to be said, even when it was almost impossible to do so.
And generated predictions based on an actual understanding of the situation by deriving meaning from what we could see from first principles as much as possible. I think, frankly, much of what I'm wrestling with at the moment is God. I mean, as I told you, like, there's a sadness that sort of verges into rage, and I've just got this deep disappointment with a lot of people who I thought were honorable and brave and insightful and full of wisdom. And this has gone on long enough, and so many people have been unwilling or incapable, and it is often hard to determine which it is, to actually investigate the evidence in front of them and generate a claim or an opinion that runs in any way counter until yesterday, right? Like until the last couple of weeks, the last month, like just about a year ago is when we saw the lab leak crumble in exactly this way. Like this is just about a year out from the lab leak narrative crumbling this way. And suddenly there were a lot of people going, yeah, but I was saying so. And now that's just like this dull roar. And, some Fauci and, Barrick and all and Daszak are still denying it. But it's you can say that now without risking getting kicked off YouTube, for instance. But you can't, we're still demonetized. We're still at risk for talking about all the rest of the things we're talking about. And the people whom I thought of as honorable and brave and insightful and full of wisdom, who have said nothing that counters the mainstream narrative until like yesterday or not even yet, and who are going to somehow contort themselves into positions that make them appear to have been carefully thinking it through all along, when what has been revealed is actually the white-coated scientism thing has confused most people who actually don't understand what science is. Most people who actually have never thought of themselves as scientists or done science or engaged with people really truthfully, honestly with the people who are doing science really have no idea. And so they really feel like they have no ability to assess the claims. And so we have a whole lot of people who have been claiming to assess the claims who actually are doing no such thing. And so now the narrative is crumbling and they're going to jump up on top of that smoldering pile and say, aha, yes, here I am. Like, what even are you standing on? Like, they're still going to be unable to assess the claims that they're either now saying yes or true or no they aren't, because they've revealed throughout this that, again, they're either unwilling or incapable of doing so.
Well, we're going to have to do a better job of sorting, because there are going to be various different categories of people.
You need a hat.
Well, I would say that there are certain heuristics, right? It is now going to become profitable to find that middle ground position.
Of course.
So you don't know anybody who adopts it now why they're adopting it, right? You do not have evidence that they have, if you get slightly ahead of the narrative now, but it ends up being a huge win, then the point is, okay, well, what is that, right? I think that was you promoting yourself. I don't think that was you actually, figuring it out. So the question is, what is the
On the other hand, the scales will fall from people's eyes more and more rapidly.
Right. And so it's a very different realm. But I found I adopted a policy for people who came to me. This happened somewhat regularly. That people came to me after the Evergreen thing and apologized, right? Yeah. And they said, you know what? I got to tell you, I did not know what was going on. I called it backwards, and I'm so embarrassed. And I would say, you know what? You don't owe me an apology, and here's why. When you figured it out, you did the right thing, right? Mm-hmm. Anybody who does the right thing upon discovering what it actually is, we're square. And I think we need to adopt this policy generally.
But the right thing includes not pretending that you always felt this way, or that you were really on the side and you're like, I'm going to dig up something that I said or wrote or tweeted, once 6 months ago in a sea of things. Like, no, that's not the right thing. That's cheating. And you know it.
Right. So you've got being honest about the fact that you've changed your position is fundamental, mm-hmm. right? Doing the right thing. And the right thing does not mean just wagging your finger at the people who screwed this up so badly. It means not wagging your finger at the people who got it right. Right.
Mm-hmm. That's also part of the right thing.
100% fundamental.
Yeah.
And, then the question is, and this is the tough part, I think we need to figure out how to feel about the various different categories of people, right? So I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but obviously feeling is a proxy for stuff, right? We feel because it's a quick way of actually deploying a game theoretic approach that has been refined by selection. And it's not very properly applied to many modern circumstances. So, for example, if you imagine yourself 1,000 years ago in some circumstance where some person delivers you a terrible insult, if you're a man, let's say, and some person delivers you we're clear on that. But if somebody delivers you a terrible insult, suggesting that you are, a weak person, it might be important that you throw a punch, because if you don't, it might imply that the person was actually accurate, and it might result in you facing a lot of bad stuff going forward. On the other hand, in modern times, if you're in a bar 500 miles from home and some person that you've never seen and will never see again says something insulting, the game theory is very different, but you still have the same emotional reaction.